before us had to set up a structure, had to set up a consciousness place, had to set up a territory, a village, had to put down stakes in a whole other reality that we are yet to inherit. And when we do make our going across, whenever we say our going home rituals, I believe that there's a whole other resonance that we go and participate in than he does. I don't see him participating in the same resonant zone of consciousness as our people, because I believe you go where your experience takes you. Mm-hmm. And I believe that whatever your experience are, you can quantify experience under suffering. You say all those who suffered would have to go here. All those who have not felt any suffering in their life would have to go there, because you go according to your energy merit. This Caucasoid, this recessive, has come to play or come to being because whatever it is that we left after our great societies were in crumbling, were in fall, were coming down, all of that was a transitional phase for us to go to the next phase of our consciousness. He had to come in just like any other scavenger and do what he could to set up what was left.
Now, more specifically, perhaps you can describe him so that we will see him and perhaps understand a physical manifestation of this.
That's interesting.
But can you describe it in a way that we can get a better picture?
Yeah, it would have to us going back to his, to studying his behavioral traits, going way back. I mean, back to the Vikings, back to where it is that he claims he comes from.
And when was that?
And that's in the code. We're not even going to look at his charts. He came from the code. Time, as far as we know as time, his time started when he began to know that there was other parts of the world. Now, it was funny how the Europeans have this thing where they say they've studied Christopher Columbus and found out that he just found out, and the group found out there was a whole other world other than Europe. Yet still, if you go back into the archives of our people in Africa, even the ones over here in the Americas, they knew about all of other civilizations living on the other side. They had an interconnection. And he was the only one that seems to have been isolated and had to now reach out to the rest of the world to find his place in this whole mosaic. There are no pyramids in Europe. He never put down any stakes for pyramids. He never built any temples. The temples you see in Greece were built by the Africans. The places in China, all done by people of color. Everywhere he goes on this planet to look for himself, he keeps bumping into us. So he has no place. Okay, let's look at his behavior before that. The history of his behavior has been put down by his own people. He talks about us being savages, but he did not recognize a high spiritual culture when he first saw it. He came upon Africans, he came upon so-called Native Americans all around, and he saw, well, they're just there in their skins, or they're just there in huts, or they're just dressed in this. He did not recognize a high spiritual technology. That's it. So he, in his own consolidated, isolated, calcified consciousness, began to make an assessment of the world based upon his own reptilian reaction to it. And that he's functioning from his reptilian brain, not from his frontal lobes where our ancestors functioned from, but he functioned from his lower brain, which meant egotism, a kind of consolidated, quantified form of culture that saw no room for anything else. That was his mentality. And you take that mentality now and you try to fit it into the broader world view of the fact that the world was a unit, a nature that was part of everything and everything a part of it. He did not have that. He came into the world thinking that he had to conquer because he came from a world where his survival was based on conquest.
Are you saying he is physically and spiritually and mentally different from the African?
Completely in the fact that his whole calcified view of the world, the fact that his pineal, the fact of his lack of melanin, the fact that he has calcification around a component of the brain that was necessary for intercommunication with nature. If that's calcified, even if he did get information coming through that instrument, it would still have been distorted based on the calcification. And you remember, calcium is an electrical conductor. But if the calcium is not structured in a proper crystalline matrix and lattice, you get a distorted picture of everything. So even the use of calcium was overbearing because the calcium shut down his pineal gland. His skin no longer had any form of color to be able to pick up light and to translate light as information. Mm-hmm. So if you can't pick up light from the very source of life, which is the sun, and translate that into the inspiration that would come from light codes, then you are now functioning from pure instinct, from pure reptilian brain perception. Mm-hmm. He now takes that and he forms a culture around that reptilian mentality. Mm-hmm. And he is now struck out because some news have come to him that there are worlds and lands beyond him. I don't understand. You think about this. How could you look up at a full moon and believe that you live on a flat earth?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you didn't connect the two together.
But that's what I'm saying.
You didn't see one as a replica of.
That's what I'm saying.
The other one.
He had no interconnectionness with the fact that if that's what's there, then they would probably looking back at us this way. He thought that the world, the earth, was the center of the universe and that the sun moved around him. So his whole understanding of the mosaic didn't come until he began to strike out and find his identity amongst those who lived the identity of spirit. Nothing spiritual ever came out of Europe. Nothing. So anything that he claims to be spiritual about himself, he took based upon a second-hand participation and experience with peoples of color. And as you look at him today and what he has shown us, you are looking at a man that over the last 500 years began to find his humanity and his interconnectedness with everything on this planet based upon his interfacing and interplay with peoples of color. Mm-hmm. He has not known humanity until he understood and began to see what humanity was in a working dynamic. Because you look at where he came from. He was the true savage. He was more of a sophisticated savage. He learned how to deal with his own disease state by coming up in disease. That's why he is so preoccupied with that which is deformed. With that which is, where we as Africans would drown a deformed baby knowing that that child could come back into another spirit. Mm-hmm. He would nurture the deformity because there was something in him that he knew genetically and psychologically that was already deformed. And Dr. Francis Cress Welsing put it very well when he said that the white skin was related to that story of Adam and Eve. That when he saw he was naked was actually the loss of his actual spectrum, his ability to see his color, and his relatedness to the world of color, where everything around us is based on programming, based on color. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to look at him now where he is, now that he's had a chance to participate, to assimilate, to, like a vampire, draw the blood of civilization into his own veins, he now has the semblance of a human. Hueman. Mm-hmm. You see? But who he is, he keeps slipping back to. Now here I have a problem with. I have a problem with the Caucasian writing all of the New Age information to tell me that somehow everything is all right now, it's all been paid, we can move forward into a higher level of spirituality. That is completely off the hook for me, because everyone knows that there is a cause and effect. There is always something that has to happen as a result of the action coming from one place. There has to be an effect coming from another. In the literature today, where people are reading thousands of books by the New Age people talking about the spiritual ascension and how our DNA is going to get its 12th helix and all of this nonsense. I'm trying to figure out that how is the most deficient, degenerated, recessive, and completely anemic and colorless creature on the planet